Welcome back to the Week 7 college football predictions and betting locks, and let's get right into it with a recap of last week. It was a 500 week. We lose half a unit from the juice, so let's get right into it with the recap. To start the day off, we had a nice call with Cincinnati -1 against Iowa State. Came off to a great early lead there. Cincinnati was in the driver's seat the whole time. Iowa State tried to make it a game towards the end there, but Cincinnati does end up winning and covering in that football game. Michigan takes care of Wisconsin, narrowly doesn't cover the spread there, but pretty dominant win by Michigan in that one. Arizona stomps on Oklahoma State. That was a play that we added in the Discord there. Oklahoma State, they're just a terrible football team so far in the season, continue to prove it week after week, losing against the spread despite these huge numbers. Then another good call in the mid-afternoon slate. We had Texas against Florida. We called for the outright upset for Florida here, and they do get it done, covering for our +7 lock and our outright prediction as well. Florida just looked better. Lagway and co. took some major steps forward compared with the previous 4 games that they had played. Now they're 500 in SEC play, and we'll see where they can go from here. For Texas, it just wasn't good enough, but there have been some major warning signs that I was seeing earlier in the season, and they all just came to pass there. This offense just is not good enough for Texas, and the defense is a touch underwhelming as well. We'll see how they bounce back this week with the Red River Shootout. Vandy against Alabama, and this was a pretty bad beat. Alabama scores late when they probably should have just laid down, and Vandy is unable to cover in that one. Think we had the right side there, but get a little bit unlucky as Pavia and co. were not able to cover in Tuscaloosa. Not as competitive a game as I thought. Of course, a deleterious fumble deep in Alabama territory early in that one, and Vandy was just not able to cover it there. Wake Forest +6 against Virginia Tech does cash in that one. Boise State at Notre Dame. Notre Dame does get that one done. Virginia escapes with a win against Louisville with 2 defensive special teams scores. I think that they got very lucky in that game. Really shouldn't have won. Got heavily outgained by Louisville. Louisville is the better team going forward here. We will look to be betting on Louisville and against Virginia in some of these weeks going forward, because this is a brutal result for Louisville to not win this football game. They got completely robbed just by some misfortune there. Washington is able to beat Maryland with a little bit of a comeback there. That was a pretty good game. Washington advances to 4-1 in Big Ten play. Texas Tech easily beats Houston. We should have added a betting lock. I talked about it last week. Texas Tech just stomps all over Houston. Credit Houston for the cool Oilers uniforms, but Texas Tech is the better team. They are a class in the Big 12 and certainly a top 10 team in the nation. They probably have their sights on a deep playoff run, and they are the class of the Big 12 right now. Wyoming +5 in the hook does not cover for us as UNLV again gets 2 punt block touchdowns on the snow ice-covered field there in Laramie. It was all setting up for this to be the perfect lock. The weather, the home field environment, and UNLV just gets lucky again, and they're 5-0, and they have beat these terrible teams, although that UCLA win looks a lot better after this last week, and we will be highlighting UNLV's game this week later in the video, but the Rebels do move to 5-0 and are the class of the Mountain West right now. Purdue unable to stay within the 8.5 against Illinois. Illinois just pulled away and are the far better team in that football game. Final page, we also thought Florida State would be able to beat Miami outright, so we go with both Florida teams, and we end up 1-1 there. Not the worst result, but Miami, wow, it's just great. The fronts are scary. Carson Beck looks like a new man, and they are just rolling. Castellanos did not have enough, despite the late flurry from Florida State. We almost get the backdoor cover, but instead of taking 1 or 2 shots for the end zone with 20 seconds left, they decided to kick the field goal on first down. I don't hate the decision. I think you should take a shot or 2, because if you do get the onside kick after scoring, then you're going to be pretty close to field goal range. So the time on the clock doesn't really matter, but it was unlikely that Florida State was going to score a touchdown there anyways. So, and Miami was clearly the right side throughout this football game. They're just a wagon, and the schedule really cools down for them. So you've got to hope that they can keep the feet on the gas, at least in practice, because that might be the best competition these guys are facing. Mississippi State just gets blown up by Texas A&M. Penalty is still a problem for A&M, but they a far better team in this one. And they have had quite the stretch of home games here, just getting teams off brutal spots. They get it again this week, except it's against the Florida team. We will talk about that spot this week. Duke against Cal. Cal is just turning into a dumpster fire here. They were able to beat Boston College a couple weeks ago, but this Duke team was just far better than them, and we will see where they're going to go from here. Duke was the better team in this spot, despite the long travel to get to the game in Berkeley there. Army against UAB, we added a late lock, UAB +7. They are not able to stay within the number as Army pulled away in that one. Ball State was able to stay within the 15 in the hook against Ohio. So once again, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We are up 15.6 units. Again, the last 2 weeks, 1.5 out of the 2.5 units that we've lost is just from the juice. So we'll look to bounce back. Loaded slate this week, and let's get right into it with the first game. NC State at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the far better team here. Their defense looked better against Boise last week. I think that they shut down this NC State team, especially at home. I don't know if they're deserving of the 16 ranking yet, but I expect them to cruise in South Bend in this football game. Iowa State looking for the bounce back in Boulder, but I'm going to take the Buffaloes to win in this football game. Colorado has huge turnover problems in every loss that they've taken this year. I think that they can figure it out, bounce back here. They're already 0-3 in Big 12 play, but they have been closer in some of these games and have gotten unlucky. The spread's pretty close. I think that Salter and co. on Colorado can figure it out here. The Colorado defense stinks. They have terrible tackling form, and the front isn't all that great, but Rocco Becht and this Iowa State offense have not really been great so far this season. I still think that there's more room to fall for them after that game at Cincy. This is a tough spot now. You're on the road twice in a row, and now you're at altitude. I think that the Colorado home field environment will be good enough to get them past the finish line in this one in some positive regression for Colorado. I think they keep the turnovers at bay, and Salter leads the Buffaloes to a win there. And then, as promised, betting against UNLV, once again, Air Force +7 here. Sarka and Air Force have a very potent offense that I think can take advantage of this UNLV defense that has been lackluster so far this season. The issue with me predicting the outright upset here is that this Air Force is among the worst defenses that I've seen this season. Horrible tackling form. The sets don't make any sense, and they just get bludgeoned all day. I think that will happen here, but this UNLV offense isn't actually that good, and they've gotten a significant amount of points just from forcing weird special teams and other turnovers here, and they haven't played teams that are all that good. I think Air Force is due for some regression here after several one-possession losses in a row. I think that they'd stay within the 7 and maybe even shock UNLV outright here. I think Sarka, with his dual threat nature, can outduel this UNLV defense. I think this one will be high scoring. I like the candy here. Give me Air Force +7 in that one. And then Florida at Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been flying up the ratings here, as they should. They're kind of crushing these teams. I don't know who decided to give them 3 home games in SEC play in a row and then send them on the road 3 times in a row, but this is what we're dealing with here. I think Florida has figured it out, and I'm going to take them to keep it close in College Station here. Texas A&M looks good. I think that the penalties are still sloppy, and I don't know that they fix them at this point in the season because they haven't actually been bitten by them yet in a loss. So I think Florida takes advantage of that a little bit. I don't think Florida wins this one outright, but I think they stay within a possession. Lagway and co. are able to move the ball in this Texas A&M defense that has looked vulnerable at times. Mississippi State really wasn't, and Auburn haven't really been able to take advantage of it as of late. But I think Florida's turned the corner here, and I think that Lagway will outduel Marcel Reed in that football game there. And then Oregon against Indiana, good game on paper. I think the Ducks win this one in Eugene. You can read whatever you want into the fact that Oregon went to overtime with that Penn State team that just lost to UCLA. But realistically, that was a road game. Indiana's looked great so far this season, but I think the environment in Autzen might be the number 1 in the nation. It's going to be rocking here. I think the home field is worth several points in this one. I like Dante Moore and the Ducks to take it in that one. I could see it being a higher scoring game, but I like Oregon to run away with that one. And then Oklahoma against Texas. Lean Texas on the bounce back here. We will see if Mateer plays. From what it sounds like, he might not play here. It looks a little up in the air. No betting lock yet because I'd like to see the Mateer status. If he is in, I think Oklahoma has a better shot for sure. Texas, I think they get back on track here. The offense has been terrible, but I think the defense is able to amp it up, and they have all this talent. It's just a good bounce back spot for Texas here. Obviously, crowd always 50-50 for this one, but I think that Texas can actually bounce back in this one and win the football game with a concentrated performance. Conversely, if Oklahoma wins here, then it's kind of just all over for Texas. So this is certainly a back against the wall spot, closer to home for Texas here. I like the Longhorns to win in this one. Next page, another slate of huge games. Ohio State at Illinois. Ohio State hasn't been tested on the road. I think Sayin and co are not able to pull away from Illinois. This Illinois defense isn't great. This Ohio State offense is very good. I think they're able to put up points. I think that Altmaier and Illinois are able to stay within the 16 points, 2 possessions in this one, especially at home with an untested Ohio State team on the road. Maybe they even take a lead into halftime, but then Ohio State squashes all hope late. We'll see how that one plays out, but I like Illinois to stay within the 2 possessions there. Then Alabama at Missouri. After the win Alabama just took, I love Missouri here, plus 3.5. Ahmed Hardy is the best running back in the nation, in my opinion here. I think he runs all over Bama here. These DeBoer teams have been up and down, coming off a huge win. Now this is their 3rd week of very competitive games in a row. I mean, that's just the nature of the SEC schedule, but I think Bo Pribula and Missouri and Ahmed Hardy are able to run over this Alabama defense. I think Alabama will be able to move the ball, but I think Missouri wins this one outright. Their defense is a little underrated as well. I like Missouri, and I don't think that we have seen their ceiling yet. Give me the Tigers outright in this one. And then Nebraska and Maryland, more of a numbers play here. I like Nebraska -5 in the hook on the road. I think we're getting good value. I've gone against Maryland a couple times this season, regretted it against Wisconsin, and then took Washington to get the win last week. I think Nebraska is better here, and Dylan Raiola and co will be able to walk all over this Maryland defense here. I also think Nebraska is just the superior team on both fronts, and they will be able to dominate there in College Park, Maryland. Northern Illinois, Eastern Michigan. We've had a lot of locks on both of these teams throughout the year. We've been pretty good. The numbers say that Northern Illinois is the spot here on the road. Just disgusting records here in the MAC, but whenever there's money to be made, we will pick it up. I like NIU +1 in that one. South Florida against North Texas. This could very well be the biggest game in the American all year. I mean, we'll see where Memphis ends up down the stretch. I think North Texas wins this one outright. South Florida, certainly impressive season they've put together so far, but don't sleep on North Texas. The matchup to watch will be this North Texas offense against South Florida defense. I think that North Texas is able to take it at home here. It should be a rocking environment in Denton there. I like North Texas to win that one. Then Rutgers at Washington. I like the Huskies to roll and continue on their streak here. Another huge travel spot for Rutgers here, but Washington's favored by a wide margin, and I like them to win and potentially cover in that one at home. And then final page, Georgia at Auburn. I like Auburn to stay within the 3 in the hook. Just a complete back against the wall spot for Auburn. You could see Hugh Freeze maybe even fired if they lose this game. I could see it, even though these games are just so brutal. This is always one, Deep South's oldest rivalry, that at Auburn, just weird things happen in Jordan-Hare. I think Auburn finds a way to win this outright. Don't ask me how it happens, but the spot looks pretty good for them coming off a bye week finally. Maybe they can get that O-line right. This Georgia Tech defensive front hasn't looked that good. So if they can just run the ball a little bit, the Auburn defense has certainly been decent so far in the season. So I think this one's low scoring. We'll cherish those 3.5 points. I think Auburn stays within those and loses, either wins or loses on a late field goal in that one. I think it'll get weird in Jordan-Hare there. Then Michigan at USC. USC coming off the bye week here in a kind of back against the wall spot after that Illinois game. Michigan coming off the win against Wisconsin here, now has to travel across the country. I don't think home field will be a big advantage in this one, but I like Maava and USC to outduel this Michigan offense. The USC defense is way worse than Michigan's. However, I think that they can solve some of the play calling issues they had in Illinois, get a little healthy after the bye week, and take advantage on offense. I like a higher scoring margin here, but I like USC to cover the 1 in the hook and win this football game at home there. BYU at Arizona. BYU lucky to be 5-0 so far in the season. I think Arizona's offense is going to be the more dynamic one. Again, I favor the points here, but I think the Arizona crowd will swing this one in their favor. I think that the Arizona defense can step up a little bit here, and BYU will regress to the mean in terms of turnovers here, and Arizona ultimately takes that one. Then we've got South Carolina against LSU. Again, LSU just in a tough place here now that they've kind of been exposed and the blueprints out there. They just can't run the ball. I think South Carolina takes advantage and stays within the 10 points here. LSU hasn't been beating the brakes off teams at home, got very lucky against Florida, so I still think their power rating is overrated because of that, because of all the turnovers. I think South Carolina finds a way to hold on the ball here and keeps it close at a Death Valley that I don't think is rocking as much as usual. And finally, Arizona State at Utah in the Big 12 here. I like Utah to win outright here. I think they're the better team, and they might win by double digits. Arizona State's looked better as of late coming off the bye week here, but I like Utah to take advantage of a relatively porous defense from Arizona State here. I haven't been impressed with their fronts, and even though Utah got exposed against Texas Tech, it's becoming clear by the week how good Texas Tech is. I like Utah to win up at altitude in this one. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel again, and thank you for watching.